And you're a super nice guy, man. The thing is, like, there's some mean people out there. You're not one of them. You're a super nice guy. And so when people are mean to you, I'm like, man.
Knowing the actual inside story of like, no, you hired fake hackers who told you that Bobby Lee was running the subreddit, and you called me up, and I was like, maybe sit on that information rather than doing anything about it. And then like 2 hours later, you're like pretending the LA Times is running some fake story on Bobby Lee while he's at dinner to make him panic and call you back, and then you ambushed him with. I'm like, this was all you, dude.
Yeah.
Like, sorry. So he's never gonna say that in public.
Yeah, no.
But just know for a fact, because I heard so many times, like after Rogan dressed him down for the Grigo Poppy in private.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was like a parent lecturing somebody.
Yeah.
And it was corroborated by someone else who was in the room. Brendan was going around saying, oh, actually, the real thing is, like, Amazon didn't think it was good enough, so they, like, gave it back to him.
So last year, we made a video going over the entire drama or the fallout between Brendan Schaub and his former employee / best friend, Mark Harley. And although some people might look at this as some high school level drama, keep in mind that back when this happened, this was at a time when Brendan Schaub's ego was completely through the roof, very similar to something that Bert Kreischer is going through at the moment, except 10 times worse, because back then, for some reason, Brendan Schaub thought it was a good idea to start fights and beefs with other people and other comedians. He was fighting with Ariel Helwani, then Bobby Lee, then Andrew Schulz, and now we're finding out that he was actually doing the same thing with everyone behind the scenes. And because Mark Harley was there the entire time to witness it firsthand, naturally when the professional relationship ended, and it, ended not in the best way, Mark Harley took it online and went on different podcasts. He went on different shows and basically was going in on Brendan Schaub very hard. Very similar to, back then when Joe Rogan went after Carlos Mencia in a very similar way. And I mean, how can you not find that entertaining? Because back then, we learned so many new things about Brendan Schaub and the whole lore got way deeper. And well, just last month, Mark Harley once again went on Brendan Cooney's podcast. I highly recommend you go watch the entire episode. I'll link it down below, because not only did he reveal some interesting new details, but he also went over some things that now make a lot of sense when it comes to the whole Bobby Lee situation, the drama with Andrew Schulz, and also Brendan Schaub's rivalry with Joe Rogan, which is pretty insane. But I highly recommend you watch the entire video. Let's get started.
I try not to watch clips. Some people will send some shit to me. Like during the 1000th episode, I don't know if you guys covered this, but it was like, of course, anytime I mention Brendan, I'll say his fucking name, I'll talk directly. But he had this whole, people are sending this, I'm like, why would you send me this? They're talking about you. And Brendan's like, oh man, 2022 is so weird. Like, I didn't have anything to do with the Bobby Lee thing. It was all Brian's fault. I don't know if you guys saw this, but I'm like, the whole episode, because his new, buddy co-host Shanaz or whatever is like, a lot of the people are asking, like, what's up with Bobby Lee now? And you're just like, I feel bad because knowing, like, I'm in that room and knowing how much Brendan didn't want to answer that question. But do you guys remember how if you watch this, he completely deflected.
Yeah, he was like, I don't even know about
He's like, Bobby, I've never friends with him. I don't know who he is. Like, Brian obviously totally harassed him. And I'm like, knowing the actual inside story of, like, no, you hired fake hackers who told you that Bobby Lee was running the subreddit, and you called me up, and I was like, maybe sit on that information rather than doing anything about it. And then like 2 hours later, you're like pretending the LA Times is running some fake story on Bobby Lee while he's at dinner to make him panic and call you back, and then you ambushed him with Brian. I'm like, this was all you, dude. Like, sorry. But then...
But can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I swear to God, when this was all happening, I thought you were like the Mike Baker, dude. Like, you were his CIA insider, dude.
Yeah, it's funny because you would assume that, but I'm like, and anybody calling me a handler, I'm like, do you think Brendan would listen to me on any? Like, he's the most arrogant person. He doesn't, he would never, now it's a convenient scapegoat to be like, other people made, I'm like, you don't listen to anybody.
Now, we did cover this back when it happened, when The Fighter and the Kid dropped their 1000 episode. And back then, we mentioned how that episode was the perfect example of how Brendan Schaub had no hope of ever coming back. And in fact, it showed how he just kept getting worse, because not only was he lying and was completely delusional, thinking that everyone had no memory of the past, but he also tried throwing Bryan Callen under the bus by essentially saying that it was his fault that he overreacted and had some anger problems, when in reality, it was Brendan Schaub's plan the whole time. I mean, Bryan Callen is dumb for believing Schaub, but Brendan Schaub knew exactly what he was doing. And in fact, the way that he screamed at Bobby Lee and the way he came at him, that was what made a lot of other comedians and the rest of the comedy scene or the podcast scene realize that Brendan Schaub wasn't really as nice as Joe Rogan used to paint him as.
Like, he came to this Bobby thing, and I'm going like, you're out of your mind. You don't know how Reddit works. So I just go, yeah, I mean, I would just maybe don't say anything right now, because it doesn't really make it like, if that is true, that Bobby Lee is secretly harassing you on Reddit, like, for no reason.
Yeah, when you say it out loud, it makes no sense.
Yeah, like,
how can anyone believe
it is true that Bobby Lee controls 100,000 person subreddit, but also doesn't own a computer and plays video games all day.
Okay, but the server was Tiger Belly. How do you explain that?
Yeah, exactly. You definitely, there's email confirmation and two-factor authentication.
And now knowing that Schaub actually tried pulling something you would see a low-level mobster doing a movie is absolutely insane. I mean, I'm surprised that no one recorded the call. I mean, that would have been gold. But the idea of Brendan Schaub and Bryan Callen making up a lie that someone is doing a story on Bobby Lee just to get him to agree to hop on a call and then scream at him and attack him is just, I mean, it's pretty hilarious, but it's also insane. Like, who would actually think that something like that would work in the real world? And also, I think it is important to point out that back then, while Mark was still working for Brendan Schaub, he was Team Schaub 100%. Like, he was, having long arguments in the comment sections defending Brendan Schaub. So maybe there is a chance that he was an influence for Brendan Schaub to be more confrontational, but I don't believe that, because, even though Mark was handling a few social media accounts and posting, he didn't have a position. He wasn't in a position where he could tell Brendan Schaub what to do, because as we all know, not even Joe Rogan can tell Brendan Schaub what to do. Keep in mind that back then, when Joe told Brendan to stop fighting, Brendan did the complete opposite, ignored the advice, and instead doubled down.
But it was funny because he that's just one example of he's blaming Brian, but then he was like, oh man, I had some really terrible people around me giving me really bad advice, like, and I did I'm like, he's talking about me, but using terms like, oh, I had a business manager. I'm like, I know all the people who are your managers. Like, you don't think any of them are bad people. They still work for you. And you're like Mark Harley, business manager, but also who didn't work for you really. I will say this though about when people are ripping on Rogan's special, I haven't watched it, but I know for a fact this is what's going on in Brennan's head. He's like, ha, 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 ha. See? Damn. Because he has a rivalry with Joe. You guys may or might know this, but like, Brendan behind the scenes, like because Joe has been critical of him in private about his stand-up, and again, I sincerely believe that Joe's one of the few people out there, like, he may be, like, as reported by a lot of people, he can verge on kind of being a dick, you know, and it's like, I've known many people like them, where it's like, he's kind of a leader and an alpha, like, say what you will, but it's like, he has this energy of, like, he's aggressive, you know what I mean? Joe has had conversations with Brendan where he's like, dude, you need to, like, this special is a disaster, whatever. Like, he was critical of Gringo Poppy.
Interesting.
And Brendan held on to that, like, Brendan, like, acts like, oh, whatever, I don't give a shit. But there are people, he can ignore all the comments, but there's certain people in his life that he obviously can't ignore. And he kind of, like, because he's trying to push back against it too. And he's like, because I think at first he's like, oh yeah, like he might have pretended to watch it, He's like, he sent it to, and why do you send a special to people that's already done? And it's like, for feedback, it's like, did you like it? Like, you're not going like, come watch my hour and give me notes. You're like, here's what I'm about to put out. It's like, cool, start over.
Don't put it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, when it comes to Joe Rogan schooling Brendan Schaub on the Gringo Poppy, the comedy special, it is pretty silly and ironic, because ever since Joe did his comedy special live on Netflix, the joke is that Brendan Schaub should sit down with Joe Rogan and tell him to quit comedy, which is pretty funny. But to be fair, even though Joe's new comedy special was complete trash and whack, even for Joe Rogan standards, it is a Joe Rogan special and it was made for his audience. Whereas the Gringo Papi, I don't know if anyone could ever make something that bad, because it wasn't just about bad jokes and a bad comedy special, but it was a whole story around the whole thing. It was wild. But also at this point, Joe Rogan has already hit that level where even other comedians, even other great comics like Cat Williams, Chris Rock, or Dave Chappelle, they don't really deliver the same way they used to in the past. And when it comes to Brendan, it does make sense that he does have this rivalry or unhealthy competition with Joe Rogan, which explains a lot of his most recent hobbies or grifts, because him getting into fish could be potentially seen as, him trying to relate to Joe Rogan since he hunts, but obviously Schaub can't do that. So then he resorts to being a car guy or a truck guy, knowing that Joe Rogan was getting a Hennessy truck built for him. And then instead of saying some positive things about his new purchase, he just talked about how it wasn't the right way to have someone build your truck, since you could do it yourself, which is absolutely insane, because Brendan Schaub literally took the truck that he built to shops. And even though he was posting a lot of videos of him at the shop or working on a truck, he would just do the most basic things to the trucks, like bolt-ons, which, anyone with the most basic knowledge of how to use tools and follow directions could do by simply watching a YouTube video.
There's legitimately, from what I know about Joe, he does like helping people, and I think he comes at Brendan in a potentially very harsh way to his ears, because Brendan is sensitive to criticism. Yeah. But he's trying to be like, I'm the only person, because you surround yourself with yes men, or you won't listen to other people criticizing you, or you're like, you got a problem on your hands. Yeah. Like when Girl Bobby dropped, and all Brendan could fixate on was like, well, you said you liked it before it dropped. And I'm like, the mother didn't watch it, dude. He's doing 3-hour podcasts a day. Yeah. He didn't have time. And then he sees it.
But it's 25 minutes, Joe.
No, I know. He couldn't even do 25 minutes.
But why would you? You know what I mean? It's like, why would you? He legitimately had a grudge where he's like, he would kind of try to downplay Rogan's comedy. Like, people saw your show and said it was like a TED Talk. And like that like helps his ego a lot to think that other people don't like Rogan's stand up. Oh so like by doing this, like Brendan would actually watch that video and be like, ha, told you. Like,
yep.
Wow. You're trying to criticize me, but you're the one that people don't even like.
Oh my gosh.
So he's never going to say that in public.
Yeah.
No.
But just know, for a fact, because I heard so many times, like after Rogan dressed him down for, the Gringo Papi in private, like, I mean, it was like a parent lecturing somebody.
Yeah.
And it was corroborated by someone else who was in the room, that I can't say who it was. At first he lied to me about it. He was like, it was Joanna. It was not Joanna. But he held on to it for months.
Yeah.
And would like say snarky things to Joe, like passive aggressively. Yeah. Awesome. He's like he put out remember the Green Room Diaries? He put that out and like Rogan said something positive about it, and he couldn't help but be like, oh, should I have asked your permission before that? Like he actually texted him that.
My
it's
God.
Like, bro, like let it go, man. Damn. This is Joe Rogan.
Yeah, it's Joe Rogan, dude.
What's really interesting is that Joe Rogan did start this new culture or this new wave of whenever on a podcast, always talking positive about other people, even if you don't really like them. Talk about how great they are, how funny they are, and how they're the best person ever. But then behind the scenes, it's a completely different story. For example, when it comes to Joe Rogan, even though it wasn't that bad, he did, according to Burt Kreischer, start a fight or a drama between Mark Maron and Burt because of a video that he posted on social media. But when it comes to Brendan Schaub, most recently for the past couple of months or even more, Brendan Schaub hasn't been holding back and is actually showing his true colors on The Fighter and the Kid, which is pretty sad that I still watch, but it's more of a hate watch at this point. It's whatever. And now it's pretty obvious that he was never a victim of jealousy or just random hate. And instead, it was his actions, his own actions, that led everyone to feel the way they do about him. And also, by the time you're watching this, I'll likely already be in Vegas or at Skankfest. So if you want to connect or see what that's like before the video comes out, because I don't know how long I'll take to edit that video, make sure to follow me on Instagram. But also, don't forget to like the video. It helps out so much, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
What did he call it? Is Andrew Schulz gay? And then Brendan's
no,
like,
Andrew Schulz
isn't
that funny.
Oh, he said that? That's what he said?
Brendan was going around saying, oh, actually, the real thing is like Amazon didn't think it was good enough, so they like gave it back to him. I remember being like, maybe they were like, but his narrative was like something. I'm trying to be as accurate as possible. He said something like, yeah, he submitted the special, and they were like, what the fuck is this? Like implying that it wasn't up to snuff, but it's like, but in other words, it was after this whole, like, remember he had that beef, and I tried to explain it. Somebody corrected me though, who knows more about it than I did. Remember I told the story about how like Schulz was like, yo, we got a problem. You know, you can't do this intro.
Bruce Buffer
thing.
Yeah.
The one thing that I got wrong about that was it was less Andrew saying, you're stealing my idea. And it was more Andrew saying, like, you ripped off, like you're coming across as mocking me. Oh. You know what I mean? Because the content of the video was Bruce Buffer is in the Bronco with Brendan, and he's going, and now it's time. And Brendan's like, bro, like, relax. It's just a comedy special. You don't need to, like, hype me up. Which Andrew took as, oh, are you making fun of the fact that, like, I haven't come out? Because you're like, oh, it's just a comedy special. Doesn't need Bruce Buffer announcing? So, like, that was it. It wasn't, like, but Brendan framed it to me like, he thinks I stole his idea. He's like, no. He thinks you're making fun of the fact that you bring Bruce Buffer around. Like, it's directly mocking it. Which made me, I'm like, oh, that makes more sense why you'd be like.
And when it comes to Andrew Schulz and the whole drama, it is really interesting because, once again, if you just listen to what they say about each other on a podcast, you would think that they were cool with each other and they were good friends. But it was a complete opposite behind the scenes.
And again, I think you established that culture in comedy, especially at a time where it wasn't really like highlighted. Dude, Andrew Schulz and his team, I didn't ask him for anything, dude. I didn't say, hey, help me out. Nothing. He hit me up. Hey, man, when you shooting your, I'm going to come make sure it's ready to go. I know,
what?
He was amazing.
He
was, I'm going to come out. Where are you taping at?
And if that really happened, if Brendan Schaub was making those comments about Schulz and how the streamers did not like the comedy special, and it wasn't because it was too edgy, it was just simply that it wasn't good, you know, it would be interesting for Andrew Schulz to respond to that. But of course, there's no real way to confirm that. But I could see it now, because this whole thing actually started a while back when Mark first revealed that there was some tension between Brendan Schaub and Andrew Schulz. But because back then Mark only had one side of the story, which was Brendan's, it did sound like Andrew Schulz was being and attacking Brendan Schaub for stealing his idea, and because he wanted to be the only one. But now that we have more information, according to Mark, it does sound like what really happened was that Andrew Schulz saw the trailer for the Gringo Papi and took that as disrespect, because even though I don't remember the full trailer, I do remember watching it, and it was basically Brendan's version of something that Dave Chappelle did. And if everything that Mark is saying is true, then it does make sense how Andrew Schulz could have seen that as being disrespectful, or as Brendan potentially wanting to troll him or take shots at him for being way over the top with the comedy special. And now that we know that how Brendan Schaub is behind the scenes, I could actually see that being the case, where Brendan Schaub actually wanted to be, salty and take shots at all the people that are doing some crazy stuff because he had to go down the Gringo Papi route.
Brendan Schaub thinks Shane Gillis is gay?
I used to think about it.
No, but I'm sure he has issues with him. I just I swear to God, it's just like, it's not a matter of like, does he say this, or like every single person who he's ever interacted with, he's talked shit behind their back.
We got a problem.
Like, I've never witnessed it. Like, I've never witnessed someone like this where it's like, do you have anybody that you can just, because like, there's a lot of people, like when you're around healthy people, they're just like, you bring up Shane Gillis, you're like, isn't he fucking awesome? Like, it's just, and he's not there, you're not on camera, it's just like, Brendan like has to say, like, but just like, the most basic psychological analysis of like, insecure egomaniac.
Yeah.
Has to put you down to put myself up.
Yeah.
Because I can't just admit that, somebody's good. And if you really thought somebody sucked, like, do you need to rub it in? Do you need to talk about it? So it always betrays something where it's like, this person you feel like has something up on you, so you find some angle of attack, like, well, he can't sell tickets. or like he bombed at this show, or his things aren't going well for it. Oh, what's funny is what he Jamal Hill came on the Food Truck Diaries before, and he was high as and like not that talkative, but it's like hearing him talk about oh dude, that guy will never be champion. Like, it's like, well,
And what's really interesting is that now I'm starting to think that the real reason why Theo Von left The King and the Sting and stopped being friends with Brendan Schaub wasn't just because he got too big and was getting a lot of hate for being with Schaub, but maybe he started to realize that Brendan Schaub wasn't really that great of a person and that he had a lot of hate inside. And so because of that, he just left and avoided all the toxic things that happened around Brendan Schaub, which was, it was potentially one of the best, one of the smartest moves any comedian has ever done, besides, going with that one company that stole a bunch of money from him. But it does make sense because even if someone like Joe Rogan, which would never happen, but if he wanted to help out the show and go on The Fighter and The Kid, it just, it would be a bad move since, most recently and for the past year, Brendan Schaub just says the most insane things. I'm not sure if he's doing it on purpose to troll and be an edgelord. And now you could argue that Brendan Schaub is way worse than Eddie Bravo ever was, because at the very least with Eddie, it was, it was pretty entertaining. It was just like dumb, conspiracy theories. But with Brendan Schaub, it's not really comedy or conspiracy theories, and it's more like just straight up hate.
But anyway, the reason he fired me is because I made a post one morning and it was like a sale now at tigerthick.com, and I accidentally put 4 C's. Now, somebody alerted me to it, and they're like, hey, by the way, you misspelled tiger. I'm like, oh shit, fix it within 2 minutes. You also, Instagram doesn't hyperlink, right? So you can't click on your phone to go to the website. Unbeknownst to me, the Tiger Thick is connected to a Facebook page that I never looked at. I never knew anything about it, but like Jay set it up or something like that.
Cooney knows about that.
I hate that shit.
Yeah, and so it auto posts to there, and it has like the Instagram page has like 11,000 followers. The Tiger Thick Facebook page has like 250 followers.
Yeah,
and this post didn't have any. By the time I looked at it, had no interactions except for one comment saying, you might want to check the spelling of that thing. Tiger Thick with 4 C's links to .com and has a picture of Brendan on it.
No. Fuck.
So
God damn.
he asked me, it's like a picture of him like during the pandemic with like a gut like next to Jay. I tried, I looked at it recently, I don't think it's still there, but like at the time, it auto redirected to .com.
Oh my
I have no idea. And so Brendan's like livid about it. He's like, are you trolling me? Like, what the f? I'm like, bro, I have no idea. They probably took it down. But I'm like, legit, he thought I was like doing that on purpose. I'm like, why the f would I be working for you and like redirecting your page? Like, it doesn't, like maybe if you fired me, I would do that. Like, but anyway, he got so pissed that he fired me. And then like whoever took it over just like didn't post at all, It was hilarious. But
I thought you were doing a bit at first when you said that you added an extra C. I was like, that's funny.
Yeah.
But this really happened.
4 C's literally redirects to .com. And he was so pissed. But he does these things where he's like, oh, the investors want you, like they say you can't work for. I'm like, no, it's your decision 100%. Yeah. You're trying to like blame it on someone else. The investors, the Russian investors who really give a that
the comic book consumers.
3 people saw it on Facebook.
Yeah.
And also, finally, now we know the real reason why Brendan Schaub fired Mark Harley, because back then he did tell a little bit of a different story. I remember him saying something like, something about him being in Vegas and how he didn't get back to Brendan Schaub quickly enough, so then he got fired. But the new story is way better and funnier, because if it is true that he made a mistake and actually linked a troll or hate website while making an ad for Tiger Thick or for Brendan Schaub's social media, it is fair to be fired over that, and it's just absolutely insane. Once again, without a doubt, the Mark Harley era was an interesting time in Brendan Schaub's life, and at this point there's absolutely no coming back from that at all. Even if he somehow became more successful and rich by starting a company, or the giveaways become this massive thing, in my book, Brendan Schaub is pretty much done so. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. Dislike if you didn't like the video. But that is all we have for today. See ya.